I was 16 the summer it happened, 1986. If you drive 2 hours north from Lincoln, Maine, you'll find a town called Fairview, though these days it's mostly empty. Gas station, one diner, a radio tower that hasn't worked in decades. Back then, it was still alive. Small, quiet, a good place to disappear for a while. My friends and I called ourselves the Static Club. It wasn't an official thing, just a group of kids with cheap radios, broken walkie-talkies, and too much time on our hands. There was me, Cal, Darren, and Becca. We'd meet in Cal's garage every Friday night, surrounded by coiled wires, dusty speakers, and the smell of solder. We weren't trying to talk to anyone in particular. Mostly we scanned frequencies, catching random snippets. Truckers, late-night ham operators, weather updates. Once we even picked up the police band and thought we'd discovered a crime in progress. It turned out to be a guy reporting his stolen lawnmower. Then came July 8th. That night was hotter than hell. No wind, just the hum of insects and the low whine of Cal's ancient fan. Becca was tuning the shortwave. She had the steadiest hands when the sound came through. At first, it was just static. Then, underneath it, something like a pulse. A low, rhythmic beat. 3 short bursts, pause, then one long. Cal thought it was Morse code, but none of us could translate it. It didn't match any pattern we knew. We laughed it off, called it ghost radio, but the sound didn't stop. It kept repeating, steady as a heartbeat. And each time it came through, the static seemed to fade, like it was making room for something else, something faint, buried deep in the noise. I remember Becca leaning close to the speaker, her hair brushing the dial. She said quietly, "That's not a signal, that's breathing." We recorded it on a blank cassette and played it back. Sure enough, under the pulse you could hear something that wasn't static at all. It sounded wet, organic, like someone exhaling through water. Cal joked that maybe it was coming from the old military tower near Miller's Woods, the one they shut down after the war. Nobody had gone near that place in years. They said it was used for long-range communication during the Cold War, but after the base closed, it just sat there, rusting, forgotten. We told ourselves that must be it. An old relay tower picking up interference. But when we tried to triangulate the frequency, it didn't match the tower's known range. It was broadcasting from somewhere deeper, somewhere inside the woods. That night, I couldn't sleep. I left my window open, and the sound of crickets mixed with something else, a faint hiss, like the static from the radio, coming from the trees beyond our backyard. At 2:13 a.m., the power flickered. For half a second, the TV in the living room turned on by itself. Snowy screen, no channel, just white noise and that same pulse, 3 short, 1 long. Then everything went dark again. The next morning, I told Cal. He laughed, said I was just spooked. But Becca looked pale. She said she'd recorded the whole thing again after we left. Same signal, but this time the pulses were closer together, and in between them you could almost make out a voice. She said it sounded like a man whispering a word, but she couldn't tell which one. Something that started with R. We promised to check it out that weekend, to drive out toward the tower and see if we could find where the signal was coming from. I didn't know it then, but that was the last normal week of my life. We drove out that Saturday, just after noon. Cal had borrowed his dad's pickup, a rusted blue Ford that smelled like gas and old cigarettes. The road to Miller's Woods was mostly dirt, winding between the pines like something carved by hand decades ago. I remember how quiet it was. No birds, just the rumble of the truck and the occasional crack of branches under the tires. The deeper we went, the less it felt like daylight mattered. The trees grew so close together they turned the road into a tunnel. Becca had brought her portable radio, the same one she'd used to record the signal. She'd wrapped the antenna in copper wire, said it might help boost reception. It started picking up the pulse again about 3 miles before we reached the old tower. 3 short beats, 1 long, over and over. But this time it was stronger, not buried under static anymore, but sharp and clean, like something alive was trying to get through. Cal thought we were close. He parked at the edge of the clearing and cut the engine. The silence hit us instantly. It wasn't the normal kind of quiet you get in the woods. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air itself didn't want us there. The tower stood at the center of the clearing, or what was left of it. A metal skeleton of rust and bent beams climbing at least 80 feet high. The dish was cracked, the control shed half collapsed. Weeds grew through the concrete floor. Darren went to look around the shed. The door was hanging off one hinge. Inside were old cables, a few weathered signs, and a row of dials coated in dust thick as flour. But here's the strange thing. One of the lights on the console was still faintly glowing red. No power source, no generator, yet it pulsed, faint but steady. 3 short flashes, 1 long. Becca was recording again, pointing the radio toward the tower. The frequency was so strong now it made the speaker vibrate. Under the rhythm, we could hear faint distortion, almost like whispers stretched too far, replayed at the wrong speed. It made my skin crawl. We stayed longer than we should have. The deeper the sun fell, the stronger the pulse became. By dusk, it wasn't just sound anymore. You could feel it, a low vibration in your ribs, like standing too close to a subwoofer. And then, for a moment, everything went silent. No wind, no insects, no signal. Just total emptiness. We all looked at each other, unsure if something had broken. Then Becca's radio screeched, a high, piercing tone that made us all flinch. The display flickered, and for a split second, the frequency numbers scrambled into something unreadable. Then, a voice. Not speech, not words, just the rhythm of a voice, distorted and low, like someone whispering through a waterlogged speaker. I can still hear it when I think about that night. It wasn't saying anything we could understand, but every instinct told me it was trying to. Becca dropped the radio. It hit the ground and the noise cut off instantly. The light on the tower's console went dark. None of us said much after that. We gathered our things and left, pretending we weren't spooked. Cal laughed a few times, trying to break the tension, but nobody joined him. As we reached the road, I looked back. The sun had gone, and in the last bit of fading light, I saw something strange. A shadow on the side of the tower. It looked like a person. Long, thin, leaning at an angle, like they were climbing down. But there was nothing there when I blinked. Just the tower, silent and dead again. That night, Becca didn't come online over the radio. She always did, every evening at 10. Cal tried to reach her for hours, but there was nothing but static. At 10:17 p.m., just before I turned my radio off, the signal came back one last time. Faint, distant. 3 short bursts, one long. Then, barely audible under the noise, a single word. Repeat. It wasn't her voice. For 2 days after the tower, none of us talked much. Cal said he wasn't sleeping, kept hearing a low hum whenever the house went quiet. Darren swore his TV would flicker on at random, showing nothing but static. As for me, I tried to convince myself we'd just stumbled on some leftover transmission equipment, a rational explanation, something human. But then Becca didn't show up to school on Monday. The teacher said she'd called in sick, but I knew she wouldn't just stay home without telling us. Cal and I went by her house that afternoon. Curtains drawn, car in the driveway, no sound inside. We knocked for a while before realizing the radio was playing somewhere in the back room. It was turned low, but you could hear it through the walls, that same steady pattern. 3 short bursts, one long. Cal went pale. We didn't go inside. The next night, around 11, I was in my room with the windows open, the radio on my desk. I wasn't even scanning frequencies. I just had it on, background noise to help me sleep. That's when it happened again. The static faded, replaced by the soft hiss of breathing. Then the pulse started, but this time it wasn't coming through the speaker. It was in the room. I could feel it in the floorboards, in the air, a low vibration that moved in time with my heartbeat. The light from the radio dial flickered. For a moment, the reflection on the glass looked wrong, too tall, stretched. Someone standing behind me. When I turned, there was nothing. The signal cut off at exactly 2:17 a.m. The house went quiet again. I didn't sleep that night. 2 days later, Cal and Darren came to find me. Cal looked exhausted, like he hadn't closed his eyes since the weekend. He said he'd driven back to Becca's house earlier that morning. She still wasn't answering calls. But the strangest part was her yard. All over the grass, frozen dew had formed in circular patterns, as if something had radiated outward from a single point. In the center of each ring, the grass was flattened, pressed into the soil in neat, perfect spirals. He said when he stood in the middle of one, he could hear it again, faint, under the wind. The signal. He wasn't sure if it was coming from the ground or inside his own head. We decided to go back to the tower that evening, one last time, to see if she'd gone there. It took almost an hour to reach the clearing. The sun was going down and the woods were darker than before, quieter too, as if everything living had left. The tower looked the same, except for one thing. The light on the console had turned back on. Only this time it wasn't red. It was white, cold, steady. Darren said we should leave it alone, but Cal stepped forward. He was shaking, said we needed to find Becca, that she'd probably been drawn back here somehow. As he approached, the hum returned, not from the tower this time, but from everywhere. It felt like the air itself was vibrating. And then, for the first time, the signal broke pattern. It stopped pulsing and instead became a continuous tone, long, high-pitched, steady, so loud it made our teeth ache. Cal grabbed the radio from his bag, turned it on, and held it up toward the dish. The sound shifted instantly, lowering, bending, until it wasn't sound at all anymore. It was a voice, but not hers. It spoke in bursts, uneven and distorted, like language being rebuilt from static. Receive. Repeat. Remain. Each word was drawn out, broken by white noise. Cal dropped the radio, the hum stopped. And then, from the woods behind the tower, came a second voice. A perfect echo of the first, but this time it was Becca's. It called his name once, soft, almost lost under the wind. We turned toward the sound. Between the trees, in the fading light, something moved. Not walking, shifting, like the air around it was bending. For a split second, I saw a silhouette, tall, too thin, head tilted slightly, as if listening, and behind it faint points of white light in the dark, flickering in rhythm with the signal. 3 short, 1 long. We ran, didn't speak, didn't stop until we hit the road. The woods stayed silent behind us, but I swear I could still feel the vibration under my feet, following us out. That night, I burned the tapes, every recording we'd made. The sound of them melting in the fire was the only thing that made me feel real again. But it didn't stop. Even now, when I think about it, when I remember that tone, I can almost feel it hum beneath my skin, faint but alive, waiting to come through again. It's been 9 years since Fairview. 9 years since that night in the woods, since the tower, the sound, the light. I told myself I'd moved on. I left the town, joined the state police, learned how to file reports and write things down in clean, clinical language. You learn to make nightmares sound procedural that way. But a few months ago, a file landed on my desk that brought it all back. Unexplained radio interference near Old Pine Trail. Coordinates, the same ones we'd written on that crumpled map years ago. The report said hikers had been hearing a pulsing sound again, late at night. 3 short bursts, 1 long. I didn't tell anyone. I just drove there. The town looked smaller than I remembered, hollowed out. Most of the houses along the main road were abandoned now. The gas station was gone, the school boarded up. Even the sign at the edge of the forest was half buried in weeds. When I reached the trailhead, it was almost dusk. The air had that still, breath-holding quiet I'd only ever felt once before. The tower was still standing. Rust creeping up its legs, vines curling around the base. But the dish, the one that had been half fallen, was upright again. Someone had fixed it. The console was gone, replaced by a smaller unit. No markings, no serial numbers, just a single switch and a cracked speaker. A thin wire ran from the back of it into the dirt, like roots. I stood there for a long time before touching anything. Then I flipped the switch. Static, low and steady, like wind dragging across an empty field. Then the pulse started. 3 short, 1 long. But this time there was something layered beneath it. A voice, faint, buried, like it was hundreds of feet underground. Evan? My hand froze. Stay. It wasn't possible. Becca had been declared missing, never found. Her house, her car, her phone, all abandoned. But I knew that voice. I knew the way it broke on the vowels, the tremor at the edge of each word. The transmission wavered, then grew clearer, as if the speaker was moving closer to the mic. We heard it wrong. It wasn't calling us. It was calling through us. The static flared. The tower lights flickered, one by one, slow, pulsing white. I stepped back, but the sound followed, vibrating through the ground. It wasn't coming from the speaker anymore. It was everywhere. The trees around me began to shimmer, the air thickened, and then I saw them. Figures, faint like smoke, standing between the pines. 4 of them. Cal, Darren, Becca, and one I couldn't recognize. They were perfectly still, faces blurred, edges rippling like film burning in slow motion. Behind them, the forest swayed in rhythm with the signal. Becca's shape tilted its head, and I swear it smiled. Then the sound cut out. Everything went black. When I woke, it was dawn. The tower was gone. Just the clearing, the frost, and the smell of ozone in the air. My car was still on the road. My recorder was missing. I found it 2 days later in my bag, even though I could have sworn I'd left it in the dirt. The batteries were dead, but when I plugged it in back home, it played something. Not static, not speech, just breathing. Slow, deep, like someone was standing right beside the microphone listening. At the end of the tape, one last sound, a faint rhythmic pattern. 3 short, 1 long, and then a single whispered word. Transmit. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, the same signal's been detected in 3 neighboring counties, sometimes over police bands, sometimes through people's baby monitors, even their phones. The department says it's a glitch, interference from old towers, atmospheric reflection. They don't hear what I hear. When the static rises, it's not random. It's searching. And every time I turn off the radio, I swear I can still hear it, faint, behind the walls, under the hum of the lights. 3 short, 1 long. I keep thinking about what Becca said that last night before she disappeared. That maybe the forest wasn't haunted, maybe it was alive, and maybe all we ever did was teach it how to speak.